I wish to read this morning from Romans, the first chapter and the 14th verse. I am debtor both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, both to the wise and to the unwise. I am debtor. I'd like to discuss with you this morning the subject living in the red. Living in the red.
Go ahead now.
Paul was a man of many names, but none of the names of which he was called were sublime, lofty, or superior. Rather, they were squat, debased, groveled, or lowly names. For the highest name of which he possessed and was referred to as being was Paul the Apostle. Sometimes, however, he was called Saul of Tarsus. Sometimes Paul the servant of Jesus Christ. Sometimes Paul the aged. Sometimes Paul the chiefest of all sinners. Sometimes Paul the prisoner. Sometimes Paul the organizer of the church. Sometimes Paul the writer. Sometimes Saul the persecutor. Sometimes Paul the beloved. But in our text today we see the Apostle Paul giving himself another name. And that was a debtor. For he said, according to the text, I am a debtor, both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, to the wise and to the unwise. And it is Paul the debtor we are concerned about in this discourse. Perhaps the reason for which Paul referred to himself as being a debtor is because he felt a sense of obligation and responsibility to God for having called him a preacher of the gospel. Because the Lord had called him to preach the gospel, he felt himself to be duty-bound and indebted to all men to proclaim the gospel. You see, Paul was aware of the fact that to be a bearer of the gospel was a prized possession, that all men were not blessed to have it. For he knew that God, being a God of all power, could have chosen any number of people or any number of things to deliver his word to the world. The Lord doesn't need us. We need the Lord. The Lord doesn't need the choir to sing. And they've sang this morning. But he could put his music in the throat of some bird and let it chant it from the treetops. And singing's been going on a long time. Sometimes folks think if they don't sing in the choir's got to stop. But the choir's not going to stop. The Bible said that before the foundation of the world, during God's creative impulses, the morning stars sang together. God doesn't need me to preach. He doesn't need Reverend Atkins to preach. He said if we keep quiet, the rocks would cry. We need the Lord. God could have dipped his finger into the 5 oceans, into the 7 seas, and written his word upon the pale blue, splendid sky. He could have given his word to a dog and made him bark it out. But since the Lord had given his word to him one day, at high noon on the Damascus road, he therefore felt himself indebted to God to preach the gospel to whomever he came in contact with. And thus he said, I am debtor, both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, both to the wise and to the unwise. Listen, if you please, I am debtor. What is a debtor? First of all, a debtor is one who mortgages, one who defaults, one who borrows, one who owes a debt, one who runs up a bill and hasn't paid it. There are many consequences that an individual suffers if he doesn't pay his debts. Number one, he can inherit a bad reputation. Number two, collection agencies and bill collectors will worry you to death in the mail, on the telephone, or at your door. And if you fail to pay your debt, sometimes they'll even come to your job and try to harass you there. Sometimes it can prove to be most embarrassing. And one can end up in court if you don't pay your debts. Thus, Paul said, since I am a proclaimer of the gospel, I am indebted to God. And if I want to liquidate my debt, I must preach the gospel. I must preach it in season, and I must preach it out of season. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto salvation. What Paul is actually saying in the text is being engulfed and surrounded in the debt that I'm in. I am therefore living in the red. You know, living in the red simply means that I have an obligation that I either haven't paid or that I can't pay. It means that I don't possess what it takes to meet my obligations, or I don't care about meeting my obligations. Now, I'm sure that all of us here this morning know what it means or what it's like to live in the red. We know that the worst thing about being in debt or living in the red is that to allow ourselves to get behind. But when you get behind, it's hard to catch up. If anybody here knows about living in the red, the black man knows. Black people are experts when it comes to living in the red. We know better than anybody else. The black man has come from the jungles of Africa, wrapped and bound in chains. And from that time he landed upon the shores of America. He's been living in the red. The black man has come from sharecroppers' fields. They've come from the rural areas, from the southern plantations, slowly migrated to the north, and we've come from the alleys, the corners, the ghettos, and the slums. And in their efforts to improve in our living conditions, they have found ourselves living in the red. Living in the red is when your output is greater than your intake. Living in the red is when your spending surpasses your income. It is then that you must say, like Paul, I am a debtor. You know, we are all debtors. We all owe somebody something. Permit me, if you please, to discuss my personal indebtedness and to whom it is that I am living in the red. First of all, I'm a debtor to my mother and to my father. If they were still here, rather than sleeping in the clay, no matter what I would do for them, I would still be living in the red. When I think of the many things that my mother did for me, when I think of how many steps her feet made for me, when I think about the many nights she tucked me in when the heat wasn't up to par, and how she sat by my bed when I wasn't feeling well, when I think of the many prayers that she prayed, that the Lord would take care of a child, when I think of how she set me on her knee when I was a mere lad and taught me how to pray, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. I realize that mother left me without having a chance to do anything for her. But if I had a chance to do anything for her, no matter what it would be, I would still be living in the red. You know, and I'm a debtor to those old folks that lived around me when I was growing up, who helped to instill within me a discipline. They didn't use the word discipline. They called it behave yourself. They didn't use the word arrogant. They said if you talk back to them that you were sassy. They didn't use the word over-aggressive, but rather they called it being fast. You know, those old folks believe that you shouldn't spare the rod to ruin the child. Those old folks around the church where I grew up in Detroit, they helped me to stay out of reform school, stay out of the penitentiary. They kept me from hanging on the block while service would be going on. If my brother or sister or other children in the church would be cutting up and ripping and running down the building, some of those old mothers or deacons would come after me and tell me, Ronald, quit that fuss. And if I wouldn't stop the next time they would come after me, they'd have two long switches plaited, and they'd whip me and tell mama when service was over. She would whip me again. Some of them are going on to judgment now, but I tip my hat to them this morning because they died with me living in the red. Then I'm debtor to my school teachers. My nursery and kindergarten teachers gave me the basis for which I've built upon to ascertain the little education that I've been able to obtain. My kindergarten teacher taught me the basic symbols for learning A, B, C, D. And then she taught me how to put them together and thus taught me how to spell C-A-T, cat, and R-A-T, rat, D-O-G, dog. You know I'm in debt. I'm in debt today to my old 7th grade English teacher who instilled in me the foundation of the English language. Her name was Mrs. McCloskey, but we called her Old Lady McCloskey. And at that time, she was already up in age. She had taught my sisters and so forth before me, and her hair was white. She wore cotton stockings. And it was she who taught me the 8 parts of speech and made us conjugate verb after verb. If we didn't do it right, Old Lady McCloskey had a long stick and a strap. She'd make us stand over in a corner on one leg with a stack of books on our head. And if we still didn't learn them, she'd make us sit with our hands in our laps and would whip us until we learned. And the fact that today I'm able to speak halfway correct. Our old lady McCloskey. You know that old soul, when I was in Detroit not long ago, I found out that she is dead and sleeping in her grave. But old lady McCloskey has left a student behind, namely me. And I'm living in the red to her today. I'm in debt to her. And then I'm debtor to America. Though America is a country of segregation and discrimination, though it is a country of robbing, looting, and rape, it is still better here than anywhere else. For it is the land of the free and the home of the brave. And I'm indebted to the fact that I too can sing "My Country, 'Tis of Thee," sweet land of liberty. And to America I'm living in the red. For though it has been guilty of hanging black folk at the nearest treetops, and then blacks have always been the first ones to be fired, the last ones to be hired. But we're still in debt to America, because even though we've constructed laws, we've helped make it a democracy. The Constitution has given me the right to pick and choose my own praying ground. And I'm in debt to America today. I'm a debtor to the earth. For it is from the earth that I get food to eat, water to drink, in order that I may sustain this body of mine. The fact that it seems that I'm never able to repay the earth keeps me living in the red. And I'm debtor to my friend. But there are so many people who have done nice things for me. And as strange as it may seem, it is always those who have befriended me that it seems I can never get around to paying. They keep me living in the red. But not only am I indebted to my friends, I'm also indebted to my enemies. For it is my enemies that keep me humble, keep me down on bended knees. The lies they tell on me keep me from getting beside myself. The gossip and the malicious talk, the hanging of my name on every signboard, keeps me aware of the fact that low is the way. So then, because my enemies keep me humble, I'm indebted to them also. They too keep me living in the red. So then, my brothers and sisters, this morning, Paul was aware of the fact that he owed a debt. And the most outstanding debt on his ledger sheet was the debt that he owed Jesus. I don't know, but there may be some of you in here this morning who feel you don't owe your father or your mother anything. There may be somebody in here who feel that you don't owe your friends or your enemies anything. There may be somebody here who thinks you don't owe anything to your school teachers, or you don't have to feel indebted to your country. But like the Apostle Paul, we all have one debt that we have acquired, and that is that Jesus has risen and died for us all. Yes, I am a debtor today to Jesus, the lowly Nazarene. I'm indebted to Jesus because he hung up his royal robe in the wardrobe of eternity took off his starry crown and got into the boat of destruction, crossed the 9-month sea. He got off and disembarked in Bethlehem one cold December night. He stayed here for 33 long years. And one Friday, one Friday, they picked him up and he traveled down the road of Via Dolorosa, the road of sorrow, and on his shoulder was my sins and yours. And I heard him declare, if I be lifted up, I'll draw men unto me. And the fact that I have a right to the tree of life means, like Paul, that I am a debtor. And the only way I can liquidate my debt is to go on and tell the old story of Jesus and his love. Well, I'm glad this morning that I'm living in the red to Jesus. And then finally I'm debtor to the God of my salvation, because David discovered that he was living in the red one day. And one day he stopped and looked around at where the Lord had brought him from the pasture to the palace. And he said, what shall I render unto the Lord for all of his benefits toward me? I didn't even have to go and get my blessing and my benefits, but he sent them towards me. I didn't even know where to go and find them, but he sent them toward me. I want to tell you this morning, church, the little money that I have, the Lord sent it toward me. The few clothes that I have to wear, the Lord sent it toward me. The little popularity he's let me enjoy, the Lord sent it toward me. The little food that he puts on my table, the Lord sent it toward me. Well, since the Lord has sent so much towards me today, I am a debtor. I am living in the red. And when I consider how much he's done for me, when I consider that he lets an angel watch over me all night long, oh Lord, and when I consider that early in the morning he touches me with a finger of divine love, wakes me up, clothed in the right mind, oh Lord, and when I consider that he walks with me, talks with me, every now and then tells me that I'm his own. Oh Lord, well, he never has left me alone. Well, when I look at all of these things, I have to say, Lord, I'm living in the red to you. All of my life, I've accumulated a whole lot of debt. But well, with my indebtedness has grown to be so great that one of these old days, I'm going to be garnished for all of my debts. For all of my debts have to be accounted for. Well, I'm indebted to a lot of people, but when old death carries me before the judgment bar of God, the old account will be settled. Oh Lord, and in the morning, I won't be in the red anymore. I'll praise the Lord around his throne. I'll thank him that morning because, Lord, you've been good to me. Oh, Lord, you've been good to me when I was down and out. Didn't even have a dime. You made a way for me just in the nick of time. And I thank you. Oh, I thank you. Because you brought me. You brought me. Hey, you brought me. From a mighty, mighty long, long way. Yes, you did. I don't know about you. Oh, I'm glad this morning. exchange.